a terror group revealing its new propaganda video featuring Donald Trump, using his call to ban Muslims from entering the U.S. as a recruitment tool.
He says the West will eventually turn on its Muslim citizens and seems to use Trump's words to support his premise.
Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims.
It is actually fomenting the growth of ISIL.
ISIS has just released a new video that features Donald Trump.
Donald Trump could be a recruitment poster for ISIL because he is fanning the flames of hate.
Dipped 50 bullets in pig's blood.
There's a difference between requiring Muslims to register and Jews.
You tell me.
Leading to attacks on Christians and reprisal attacks on Muslims.
And saying that this country doesn't trust or doesn't like all Muslims and damns a religion plays right into their hand, right? That's what ISIL is selling.
Not a fundamental driver, perhaps, but it stokes an already raging fire.
That is the power of ISIS to spread terror.
The violence now is in some ways a blowback.
The lightning advance of ISIS.
In sarin, cyanide, and mustard gas. And now they possess nuclear materials.
But this tit-for-tat violence is fueling sectarian tensions.
Guerrilla war can't be won necessarily with just conventional force. Most guerrilla wars are actually negotiated to a solution.
I would knock the hell out of ISIS.
Okay.
I would hit them, Brian, so hard like they've never been hit before.
What about civilian casualties?
You have to take out their families. When you get these terrorists, you have to take out their families.
Where are the women? Where are the children?
This is obviously un-American. It's against American values.
They said, what do you think about waterboarding? I said, I like it a lot, and I don't think it's tough enough.
It's not viable.
And completely counter to the strategy that the military advisors are giving.
I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me.
The military is not his palace guards.
Almost 100 foreign policy experts signed on to an open letter refusing to support you, saying you're embracing expansive use of torture.
They won't refuse. They're not going to refuse me, believe me.
But they're illegal.
The American Armed Forces would refuse to act.
How the U.S. military is preparing. Not only are they terrified, but some people he spoke with are preparing to resign.
We should go for waterboarding, and we should go tougher than waterboarding. In fact, you are required not to follow an unlawful order. That would be in violation of all the international laws of armed conflict.
I was looking for some certain things that discussed national security policy or strategy, and they weren't there.
And that's just a bunch of hot air. There's nothing behind it.
I didn't serve, I haven't served, and frankly, I had deferments.
The VFW issued a statement Monday condemning Donald Trump's comments.
He's not a war hero. He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
Who he says he is, let him, it's all going to come out in the wash, and it's going to tell, the truth will be there.
Old settled law says once you're here, you are entitled to our constitutional protections. Every single case. All right. Just so you know.
I disagree. Okay?
Where you put them there, you build it out, you have security.
Take a big piece of land in Syria. They can maybe go back to their homes.
Congress organized a commission to look into the reasons why that internment happened. And they found that it was three things that brought that about. One was racial hysteria. Second was war hysteria. And third was failure of political leadership.
These kinds of comments, talking about banning Muslims, this is bait for extremists.
When can we get rid of
We're going to be looking at a lot of different things. He wanted to hit a protester who interrupted him.
I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
Watch again as he's sucker punched right in the face by a Trump supporter in the cowboy hat.
And there are studies showing a significant portion of what Trump's backers have what the Washington Post is calling racial anxiety.
Two new studies, one from Hamilton College and the other from the Pew Research Center, show racial resentment is the biggest driver of Donald Trump's, indicates negative opinions of what they call newcomers, African Americans, Latinos, Asians, and Islam. Those are the biggest predictors of support for Donald Trump.
Go back to where they came from.
And nationalism is coming popular right now, and Donald Trump is making it popular.
That he will think in terms of what is good for the majority of Americans. And the majority of Americans, after all, are white.
Leftist scum, your day will come!
We feel we need to have a true nationalist party where we can have a pincer attack, where people will work within the Republican Party to be able to promote nationalist values.
Well, if there's going to be any victims in a terrorist attack, I hope it's the left-wing liberals that are victims. I hope it's the people
that are members of Black Lives Matter. I hope it's the people that oppose Trump that are the victims of the next terrorist attack.
We're going to beat China, Japan. We're going to beat Mexico.
I want to go and buy debt and default on debt. And you never have to default because you print the money. I hate to tell you, okay? But I would borrow knowing that if the economy crashed, you could make a deal.
Donald Trump blames China.
We can't continue to allow China to rape our country.
President Trump did impose a broad China tariff.
Chinese state media have come out laughing at the very fact that we have democracy in this country.
The Chinese have seen this as a rallying cry to justify a lack of democracy.
I want to default on debt. You know, I'm the king of debt. It gives me a great thrill.
Sparking concerns of a currency war with the U.S.
My policies on trade will lead to a trade war. I call myself the king of debt. I'm the king of debt. Hey, guess what? The economy just crashed.
China's stock market plunged 7% and then was shut down altogether for the day.
So impactful that this, could lead to a huge global shutdown.
Stocks all around the world are tanking because of the crisis on Wall Street.
The more likely, Dan, we see a crash.
The Dow suffering its biggest point drop on Friday.
The Dow down 500 points.
Stocks sold off, oil prices sold off. European markets, they did because in part of numbers from China.
Big oil company stocks have been hit especially hard on Wall Street.
So your Middle East policy is basically guided by our interest in oil.
I'm only interested in Libya if we take the oil. If we don't take the oil, I have no interest in Libya.
So you would keep troops in Iraq after this year?
I would take the oil.
It turns out we have a virtually unlimited supply of fuel right under our feet.
Oil use has been rapidly increasing, with China expected to account for half that usage within the next 5 years.
They have certain areas of oil that they took away. They have some in Syria, some in Iraq. I would bomb the shit out of them.
A proposal by OPEC members to cut oil production.
A supply gap caused by Iran's decision to cut oil sales.
You'll get Exxon to come in there in 2 months. You ever see these guys, how good they are, the great oil companies? They'll rebuild that sucker brand new. It'll be beautiful. And I'd ring it. And I'd take the oil.
With oil prices soaring, a growing number of Americans are bracing for a global meltdown, the end of cheap oil, and the possible threat of political and economic instability around the world.
I would take away the oil.
Militants routinely attack oil installations and kidnap workers, disrupting production and making global prices soar.
I would bomb the hell out of those oil fields.
But around the world these days, we're seeing the rise of another kind of national identity. One that can be darker and more troubling.
Donald Trump hinting at a new world order.
He dropped a bit of a foreign policy bombshell, saying that the U.S. should not automatically come to the defense of our NATO allies, that there should be perhaps some conditions attached to that.
Solidarity among allies is a key value for NATO. We defend one another. 2 world wars have shown that peace in Europe is also important for the security of the United States, unquote.
And you said before that you're worried about a rise of nationalism as a result of what's going on in Europe.
We may well be driving people into this position.
Donald Trump views leaders like President Putin, even President Erdogan in Turkey, as strong, and we should not interfere in what they do.
The military took over, imposed martial law, and instituted a curfew.
Turkey is in a state of crisis tonight.
Chaos on Turkey's streets.
His statement, as well as a statement to the New York Times about Turkey, was the most destructive and idiotic statement on foreign policy by a president.
So it's this sort of authoritarian, autocratic bent.
Look at Prime Minister Abe and his plan to reinterpret Japan's pacifist constitution and remilitarize after 70 years. Or Putin in Russia, Erdogan in Turkey, Xi Jinping in China. In all cases, assertive nationalism is a core part of the leader's appeal.
North Korea appears to be warming up to Donald Trump, describing him as a wise politician.
And you got to give him credit. How many young guys, he was like 26 or 25 when his father died, take over these tough generals, and all of a sudden, it's pretty amazing when you think of it. How does he do that? Even though it is a culture and it's a cultural thing, he goes in, he takes over, and he's the boss. It's incredible.
President Erdogan just put 10,000 people in jail, fired 100,000 civil servants, judges, teachers. There's no free press left. He's subverted the Constitution. He's establishing an Islamic State. And Donald Trump admires him for that.
Putin reaffirming their bromance by calling Trump, quote, brilliant and talented.
I got to know him very well because we were both on 60 Minutes. We were stablemates, and we did very well that night.
Isn't he bright? He is.
Called Trump a, quote, outstanding, talented man.
We have no persecution at all of homosexuality.
We've abolished all of that.
Не нужно бояться, не нужно стесняться.
Мы сталкиваемся с проблемой демографического характера.
Pedophilia and homosexuality.
And what he did was invite Vladimir Putin to invade the Baltics.
And is this the beginning of a Russian invasion?
What if Russia decided to just annex the space station, kind of like Crimea?
Russia is practically in the war against Europe.
U.S. fighter jets have intercepted Russian military planes off the western coast of Alaska.
Vladimir Putin has sent a warning to European buyers of Russian gas.
6 Russian planes all flying together, 2 Russian Bear long-range bombers, 2 Russian refueling tankers, and 2 Russian MiG fighter jets.
NATO has monitored an increased number of Russian flights.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded.
Russia signed a deal with Britain, France, and those countries to make sure that Ukraine had territorial integrity in order for Ukraine to voluntarily give up its nuclear weapons. That was in Russia's interest, it was in the West's interest, and Russia violated that by violating, for the first time since World War II, an international border in Europe.
Do you feel comfortable with Donald Trump's hand on the nation's nuclear code?
Donald Trump had no clue what the nuclear triad is, and so now that they've discovered what it is, they're ready to use it.
Can you tell the Middle East we're not using a nuclear weapon?
I would never say that. I would never take any of my cards off the table.
How about Europe? We won't use it in Europe.
I'm not going to take it off the table.
You might use it in Europe?
Nuclear capability. Now, our capability is going down rapidly because of what we're doing. It's in bad shape.
But if you're concerned about proliferation, letting other countries get nuclear weapons.
At some point, we have to say, you know what? We're better off if Japan protects itself against this maniac in North Korea. We're better off, frankly, if South Korea is going to start to protect itself.
Saudi Arabia, nuclear weapons?
Saudi Arabia, absolutely. They have to protect themselves, or they have to pay us.
Now we're going to get greedy for the United States. We're going to grab and grab and grab.
With Japan, they have to pay us, or we have to let them protect themselves.
So
I want them to pay us some money. I think Israel will do that also, yeah. I think Israel do. There are many countries that can pay.
To break up NATO is, and to say we're not coming to our allies' defense unless they pay us the money, is a complete break. And it retrenches America into a less safe America.
This is clearly a violation of that agreement.
That, he says, could have a chilling effect on non-proliferation efforts.
bomb the hell out of them. No, bomb them. We're going to start World War III.
Nuclear should be off the table. But would there be a time when it could be used?
Are you kidding me? How close is his thumb to the trigger?
The Pentagon has told the Congress in an annual report that China shows a growing capability to project its military power beyond its shores.
This is war. If you look at it, this is war coming from all different parts.
I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will.
A terror attack in downtown Tel Aviv.
Israel has been testing out radioactive dirty bombs.
Either withdrawing from the United Nations or curtailing our funding.
I wanted to hit a couple of those speakers so hard.
I think we're on the verge of civil war in Europe.
5 Chinese Navy ships have been spotted in the Bering Sea off the Alaskan coast.
You're a treasonous piece of garbage. Why don't you go back to Canada?
A massive coordinated sweep to capture Halifax, Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, Vancouver.
Protests are being staged across the country today.
We had 4 guys, they jumped at him, they were swinging and swinging.
And there's another war, you know, what do we get out of it?
Wearing protective suits, troops practice their decontamination procedures.
Russian President Putin reportedly threatening nuclear war in order to force NATO troops out of nations bordering Russia.
It's insane. It's going to hit this guy so hard his head would spin, he wouldn't know what the hell happened. You have to fight fire with fire.
Confirmed reports, I repeat, confirmed reports of nuclear detonations in New York and Pennsylvania. My God.
War. War never changes.
And we need brain in this country.